reach beyond the darkness, beyond the grave, to an unexplored dimension as we travel to the mysterious realm of ghosts. Journey with us into the world of ghost stories. Hello, I'm Patrick McNee. You know, in childhood, telling ghost stories was a playful way of letting our imagination soar. Young minds captured in a web of excitement, fear, and confused belief. Well, today, with the popularity of ghostly phenomena, it tends to raise a question. How much of what we thought was in our imagination was?
Much of the area surrounding the Alamo harbors rumors of activity beyond our realm.
Robbie wasn't touching the cards, I wasn't touching the cards, and the cards flipped.
Is it Satan's presence throughout the hotel that the Tommyknockers are trying to warn us about?
Buried treasure, floating phantoms, photographs revealing strange pictures, stories you would expect to find in the pages of a novel. But these stories are being told today with the setting in and around the famous Alamo. And with a history dating back centuries, perhaps the town of San Antonio, Texas, has more to offer its visitors than your regular tourist attractions.
I have heard things, doors opening and closing, windows opening and shutting, lights maybe flickering that should not.
And they shut the doors behind them, and they said she just came all the way to the doors and started banging on the doors to let her in. And they just sat there. They couldn't understand what it was.
Here at night, it's real spooky at night, and there's a lot of weird noises at night you can hear, especially when you're by yourselves.
She was standing and watching us rehearse. Stayed probably 30 seconds to a minute, and then just very slowly disappeared.
In recent years, San Antonio, Texas has become a favorite tourist destination. While this fiesta city is known for its beauty and cultural activities, there is the other side. A part of its history time has not buried, giving those who bear witness a chilling reminder that the past here is not dead. Remember, this is one of the oldest cities in America. The first Europeans, the first Spaniards arrived here in 1691, and before that, there were Indian encampments here for 10,000 years. This is a very heavily populated area since many years past. The most famous attraction in San Antonio is the Alamo, standing still as a reminder of the bloody battle between Texas and Mexican troops in 1836. The accounts of the final days at the Alamo remain controversial, with the result a painful lesson for the hundreds that died. Much of the area surrounding the Alamo harbors rumors of activity beyond our realm. It's as though there's something out there, restless and lost, with a need to find shelter in a familiar place.
It came exactly from this spot right here. Nowhere else except this spot right here.
Ruben Mendez is an employee of San Antonio's Alamo Dome, a 5-level arena home to major sporting events and concerts. Since its opening, there have been numerous reports of strange ghostly activity occurring in and around the Alamo Dome.
It was about at 4:30 in the morning, and we were doing a changeover for one of the basketball configuration setup. And basically what happened, we came from this area, this hallway right here, me and 2 other fellow co-workers, and we heard this kind of sound.
The sound echoed throughout the halls, stopping and starting on the crew's every move. When Ruben approached the window, the loud rapping noise instantly turned into an eerie silence. Psychic Marie Simpson was called in to investigate.
I saw the energy or the spirit of a young man who was on the outside of the building that I felt was trying to get in. I also felt the energy of a woman who had lived here many years ago. And I feel that she eventually died somewhere around here. And I feel that that's why I picked up her energy.
Could the woman Marie is speaking of, in fact, be the same spirit spotted by a cleaning crew at the front entrance of the Alamo Dome one night?
It was about 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, and they saw this, like they said, this woman just floating towards them, and she was wearing all black. And they just stood there for a while and watched her.
The women couldn't believe their eyes. It wasn't until the dark figure neared the glass that they realized what was standing before them. But the belief that ghosts exist at the Alamo Dome is not only confirmed by the sights and sounds heard by witnesses, but by smell. In this case, lilacs.
This seating right here is known to have its own little scent and coolness. That scent is so strong, but it only lasts 2 or 3 minutes, and then it's gone. It's just like it was just never there. And then your hair stands up, and you get goosebumps, and you get chills.
The Alamo Street Restaurant and Theater has also reported ghosts of their own. Deborah Latham, the theater producer, is just one of many who have encountered Marguerite, a resident ghost of the establishment.
I was in rehearsal on the stage here and looked towards the back of the auditorium in what was the choir loft of the church and saw a woman in a very long, flowing dress standing very nicely, quietly watching us rehearse.
And she is more active here when our theater is active. When there's a lot of productions going on and a lot of rehearsals, at that time she's real evident.
Marguerite has spoken to people here in the theater part of the building on several occasions, calling them by name, and other people have heard her.
But Marguerite isn't the only spirit living here. She is accompanied by a little boy named Eddie.
Eddie loves the kitchen. He loves knocking things around and breaking things in the kitchen. He just has a great time with all that.
We have 2 photographs of the woman that we know as Margaret. Little Eddie appeared in one of those 2 photographs. And what's extra creepy about Eddie in the photograph is that he was not in the original photograph. The photograph was taken, was framed and under glass, and then Eddie appeared several months later.
They want to be noticed. It must be frustrating to be completely unseeable by people. Wouldn't you want to do something to cause us to know that you were there and part of the family circle too?
In fact, there was one local ghost that managed to get the attention of family members by persistently knocking on the wall. No one knew what was causing it.
They put rat traps out. No, it wasn't a mouse, wasn't a rat. Well, what was it? And it kept rapping and tapping and tapping. And finally, maybe they've removed a whole panel from the wall. And there revealed were some little chamois skin bags of gold coins and some silver.
The homeowners were amazed. Could something of the supernatural world have led them to this treasure? Who exactly was this spirit, and in which realm did it exist?
I feel that some of them are not at rest for whatever reason. They haven't gone on to another dimension, heaven, if you want to call it that. Some of them are possibly stuck here. Some of them possibly had a very close connection here.
The locals claim that many of the ghosts wandering these parts belong to souls who died at the Alamo, and possibly to the widows and children they left behind. Whether or not this is the case, the spirits of San Antonio seem preserved in time, just like the Alamo.
It was a typical California summer afternoon when Meta had her first visual encounter.
Our next story is a tale of the American Indian. They worshipped the earth and considered the land sacred. But could their devotion have been so great that even today their spirits linger on as reminders and caretakers of the past?
When the Christensen family moved into their Palos Verdes home many years ago, little did they know about the family already residing there. Fred, then only a small boy, told his mother these fantastic stories about little strangers playing with him. Meta dismissed his little tales as an overactive imagination, until one day.
The very first thing that happened That one really gave us the chills because I had a blue and white old-fashioned vase with a lid on it and a tassel around it, and it broke. The lid broke, and it broke in so many pieces that you couldn't put it back together again. Just put it on the kitchen counter. That was in the evening. We all went to bed, and when we woke up the next morning, it came out, and I swear to you, it was all put together with a tassel, just the way it was supposed to be. It freaked us out because there was no way any of us could have put it together. It was so many pieces.
If nothing else, it unsettled the family. Even their cat, Boo, sensed something out of the ordinary was happening. But that was only the beginning.
After that, it just started, things started happening. We would be lying in our bedroom, in our bed, and we'd hear the sliding door open from my kids' room, and footsteps coming out and stop in the middle of the room. We'd be sitting in the family room, and we hear the light switch in the bathroom going on and off. Blow dryers going on when no one would be near the blow dryer. Hangers moving in the closet. My thoughts were nowhere near any ghosts or spirits or anything like that.
Although Fred's experiences were more vivid, no one really gave any notice to his stories. All children told incredible stories, didn't they? It was a typical California summer afternoon when Meta had her first visual encounter.
When I was sitting by my desk and I saw something on the corner of my eye, and I looked over and I saw this tall Indian. And I just didn't react immediately, but then I just threw my face back again like that and see, what was that? And he was gone, just gone. So then I ran outside because there was an Indian there, tall Indian, and there was no one there. And that's when I started maybe thinking a little bit more seriously about what Fred had seen.
The strange part was that Fred's stories also included apparitions of two little Indian girls.
I was watching cartoons and I just focused on some place and just sit down, and I felt like the chair would be moving back and forth like a Ferris wheel or something. And I saw kids out of the corner of my eye just laughing and playing, pushing the chair.
These little spirits had found a new friend in Fred, obviously unaware of how they scared him.
When I was laying in bed, I felt like something tugging. The sheets weren't moving, but I felt like the pressure moving back and forth, like being pushed out of bed, my legs. So I called my mom in, and then I had to sleep in her room for that night.
The family was reluctant to tell anyone about the strange things they'd been experiencing.
People have a tendency to believe that it's in your imagination.
But Meta did tell some friends. One of them knew the history of the area. Slowly, things started to fall in place. Centuries ago, Indian villages dominated the Palos Verdes Peninsula and San Pedro Bay. The beauty of the land inspired them to settle down, and there they stayed for hundreds of years.
In my neighborhood, where we live by that encampment, it's the most natural area for the whole Indian encampment. They had the trading route that went all along the coast here, and they went over to Catalina Island and traded with the people of Catalina Island.
It was inevitable with all the Indian villages that there would be Indian burial grounds. And it is on one such burial ground that the house is built where Meta and her family are living. Is it possible that Indian spirits are still roaming the land that they once inhabited?
There's no doubt in my mind now at all that right where we live, there are spirits. There are. There's no doubt about it.
It took the family a long time to get used to these supernatural visitors. Now Meta feels there is a reason why they're still around.
They might just be home. Want to be here, you know, be left in peace. It's like the sighting that I had outside. It was so peaceful because he was just walking up very peacefully. You know, it was just peaceful.
Behind me, I heard the faint sound of crying, and the sound of the crying was coming from the gas chamber.
Terrifying tales of a brutal murder and cannibalism still haunt the small town of Rawlins, Wyoming. Although the prison has been closed for the past 15 years, when we visited, we found witnesses who claim this prison is still open and housing former inmates. Our next story asks, could a prisoner's cruel past condemn him to his cell for all eternity? Our story starts here, at the Wyoming Frontier Prison, formerly the State Penitentiary. The prison closed in 1981, but some believe the spirits of a few inmates still remain behind the prison walls. Some of the worst murderers in the history of Wyoming spent their last days in the death house before their execution.
This is the death house, and I think this place in history sounds a lot different feels a lot different than any place else in the prison. The one that really scares me is the guy on the back side. This cell belonged to, I think, the worst murder in the history of Wyoming. When we do night tours, his candle always burns brighter or dimmer than any of the others. I don't know, I feel a little uncomfortable talking about him.
There's many times the hair on your back will stand up. You're fully aware that something is there, what you don't know. Pixley is tremendously scary. Even when you're doing tours and you're talking about him, as a tour guide, you always get a sense that this is maybe something you shouldn't be talking about. You'll get the creeps and the willies. And the candles will flicker. His will be straight. The other candles on the night tours will flicker. There's definitely something to his story, I'm sure.
The last execution, Andrew Pixley in 1965, he was the youngest guy executed here. He was 22 years old. And when he was executed, they wanted to make sure that there was no leaks in the gas chamber. Usually they go by a pig, but this time they went out onto the streets of Rawlins and they found a stray black cat, and they executed it. Black cat supposedly haunts the penitentiary. I was running out of A block one night after I came out of the cell, and I was running around and this black cat darted out in front of me. And he went around the corner, and another tour guide, Molly, was waiting for me there, and it darted out in front of her, and it just disappeared. And every once in a while we see him, but he's lurking around every night tour.
The one that scares me is the guy who was in the middle cell, Andrew Pixley. He was 21 years old when he committed the most horrible murder in the history of Wyoming. Family from Chicago on a ski vacation, Jackson Hole. He murdered 2 little girls. There was evidence of cannibalism. The beatings were so horrible. There are elements of Pixley's case that, in my opinion, are almost worse than Jeffrey Dahmer. He had the least witnesses. He had the most ministers. He was praying right at the time of his execution. He was baptized just for his execution.
Andrew Pixley was described as the perfect psychopath. He had no conscience at all. He didn't remember any of the heinous crimes committed when they found him in the room covered with blood. His execution was carried out shortly after midnight, December the 10th, 1965, in the prison gas chamber. Andrew Pixley took longer to die than any other man in the death house.
He lived twice as long as all the others in the gas chamber. They say it takes longer to kill evil, and I'm convinced this guy was pure evil. And I mean, I'm not a big proponent of capital punishment, but this Pixley character, he scares me to death because the crime is so horrible. This is the prison gas chamber. The mechanics of the gas chamber, the warden pulled a pin on the side, dropped this handle. A bag full of cyanide pellets rolled into acid below the chair. Prisoner was unconscious in 10 to 15 seconds. They were all dead within 3 minutes, except for Andrew Pixley. The witnesses were in the back room. For the first execution, there were 47 people in this room. By the time Andrew Pixley was executed in 1965, there were 13 people. They changed the seals around the windows before the execution. And then, as I said before, they test the gas chamber to make sure it's working all right. We don't give tours in December. I'd been sitting in my office, I'd been researching the executions. We were doing a new display on the executions. I had a head full of stories of executions, but I didn't have all the dates, and I came up here, it was getting kind of late, and I needed a flashlight to read the dates of the walls in the hanging room. I was writing to the dates and with my flashlight in hand, and my flashlight drifted over and I caught the black eyes of Andrew Pixley. As I looked deep into his eyes for the first time, I thought, there's something different about this guy. I'd never thought about it before. Something evil, possessed, demonic. At the instant I thought that, I swear to you, I heard something. I didn't recognize it at first, but behind me, I heard the faint sound of crying. Not just crying, young girls crying. And the sound of the crying was coming from the gas chamber. I was scared to death. Fumbling with my keys, I turned around and I'm walking to get out of here as fast as I can. When I got outside, and I thought about this, I mean, why just at that moment did I hear the crying? And why did I hear it then? And then I heard the church bells ringing a few blocks over, the Catholic church. And the first thing I thought was Andrew Pixley had renounced the Catholic faith shortly before his death. And then I realized it was December 10th, 1965. His execution was just a few minutes after midnight that day.
Andrew Pixley's sentence was death, but his soul is the grim reminder that not all is at peace.
Robbie wasn't touching the cards, and I wasn't touching the cards, and the cards flipped.
This story takes us to a small schoolhouse in rural California, where one small spirit finds comfort. Her tragic death kept poor Harriet from starting her first days of school, yet her spirit could not be stopped from enjoying those good old golden rule days. Let's watch.
Noises, smells, movement of objects, and even discernible sensations. All normal happenings when people are around. But if people aren't around when these things occur, the phrase about things that go bump in the night becomes a haunting reality. Little is known about hauntings, only that most hauntings have no apparent reason or purpose, or so the experts claim. Our story might just prove the contrary. It takes us to a small school in Gorman, California. It's quiet out here now. The children are in their classroom getting ready to start the day. There's also a little girl you may not have seen, named Harriet. You can't see Harriet because she died over 6 decades ago. But everyone here at Gorman Elementary School believes her spirit lives on.
We used to say that she lived up in the heater up in the corner of my classroom, and it would just bang. It was like somebody banging on a metal desk constantly.
I was looking for somebody else from here, and these doors, they just swung open by themselves. And there was nobody around here, and there was no wind coming through any of the other windows or doors.
Every day there was banging.
And I thought, oh, come on, you gotta be kidding. You can't be Harriet.
Things like the phones blink, and lights that don't work quite right, or things that you thought you shut off and they're back on again.
And there are times when you can hear some music, and nobody seems to be around.
A lot of people say that they hear a lot of noise on these stairs when they're in here at night. It's real quiet. If you can notice, the stairs make a lot of noise.
I sure do.
And you can hear a pitter-patting of little feet out sometimes.
Things kind of echo through the whole school.
Even today when the kids are out on the playground, they say they feel like somebody's out here with them. I don't know, it feels pretty quiet out here to me.
Once she was swinging out here in the swings, somebody came out. Somebody was going to get a drink. They came out here, looked, and they saw the swing swinging by itself. There wasn't wind or anything.
Harriet is not evil. Harriet is not mischievous either. She doesn't play tricks on people.
But if Harriet wants to play a game of cards, she certainly doesn't wait for a formal invitation. Joanne's son, Robbie, called his mother in a frenzy one quiet afternoon when he was playing a game of solitaire.
Mommy, 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 the cards are flipping. Robbie, you've lost it. No, Robbie, the cards don't flip. And he goes, Mommy, no, look. And the cards flipped. And Robbie wasn't touching the cards, and I wasn't touching the cards.
And then there is the apple tree. In Joanne's classroom, a paper apple tree stands in the corner, decorated with 21 paper apples. On each of these apples, there's a name, one for each of the students in the class.
And I was sitting at my desk, and I'm counting my apples, because something didn't seem quite right. So here was this extra apple that was not in the right place, and the apple was like way high, and there was no way that anybody could put that apple up there. And the apple had Harriet's name on it.
Strangely enough, the students accepted this as a natural occurrence. They didn't seem to mind having an extra student around.
So they more or less adopted her into our classroom. Harriet had her own desk. Harriet. Everybody else had a name tag. She had a name tag. She had a pencil.
But where did Harriet come from? And why did she choose this school? The story takes us back to the 1930s.
Behind the school and all around here in Gorman are fields, and Harriet's father was a farmer.
Harriet would go to the field with her father. Alongside the field was the usual route for the local school bus. The bus with the school children inside fascinated the young Harriet.
And so one day she was riding with her father on the tractor, and she saw the bus coming, and she wanted to go see how many children were on it and where it was going. So she jumped off the tractor and lost her balance and fell.
Harriet's father didn't realize this until it was too late. The tractor killed Harriet instantly. He buried her there, right where she died.
And according to the story, then when the school was built, it was built directly over Harriet's grave.
The stage area is only one of the many playgrounds Harriet uses at this Gorman school. I suppose it's fitting she likes to play right here. I'm told she's buried right where I'm standing.
Although her presence doesn't bother anyone, one still wonders why Harriet chooses this school to haunt.
I would say it's because Harriet was someone who really desperately wanted to go to school. And she never really had that chance. And now that the school is here, she can be here anytime she wants and as often as she wants.
And with all the commotion Harriet has caused, she has become a celebrity in her own right around Gorman. She has even brought comfort to some.
It's a nice feeling working here. You always feel like there's somebody here. You never feel totally alone here in the school.
Turned out it was a human skull with ram's horns.
Antiques seem to hold a fascination for most of us. Locked within each piece is a glimpse of a lifetime gone by. In our next story, we find that spirits have a fascination with the remnants of the past as well. Let's watch as the new owners of some priceless pieces find they brought home more than they bargained for.
Gothic backdrops and medieval castles. Perfect settings to expect roaming spirits and eerie visions. So nothing prepared us for the ghostly tales surrounding this ordinary family house in the middle of the desert, the house of Rusty and Bill Oster. Shortly before Rusty and Bill got married, Bill encountered a vision which would remain with him for years after.
He was laying on the couch one evening and was wide awake, and all of a sudden this woman in a bride's gown appeared in the hallway, standing there with the veil and the whole bit. 3 weeks later, this lady that's kind of like a mom to me, she picked out my dress. We brought it home, and when he seen the dress, he just freaked because the dress was identical, I guess, to what the bride was wearing.
The same as what I've seen.
It made such an impression on them that today the dress has a special place in their bedroom. But this was just the beginning of many bizarre happenings surrounding the family.
And we used to have a jukebox that would go on and off, and it's like every night at 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, it would slide all the way over and play Elvira. So whoever it was loved the song Elvira. And then we explained it, oh, it's probably power surges or something like that. But same time every night, about 1:30 in the morning, the jukebox would go off.
Oddly, these incidents didn't happen in the same time frame. More so, they didn't even happen in the same house.
All of a sudden, this picture right here, nobody was near the organ or anything, come flying over this way right at him. It was like somebody just took it and heaved it at him. And he ducked, and he's, you know, grabbing his hands going, whoa, whoa, and he broke the fall, and it didn't break, but it hit the carpet, and he turned around and he looked at me, he goes, did you see that? And I said, oh yeah, I saw it, and I started laughing, right? So a little while later, he goes on out there after he finished the table, and we set the picture back up. And all of a sudden, I'm standing there, and all of a sudden you hear this woman's voice, and you hear, ha, 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 ha. And it was coming from the vent up there.
Somehow it didn't matter where the Osters moved to. These strange happenings would follow them. This was not your ordinary haunting. In contrast to the simple exterior, the Osters' living room transports you to a graveyard of fabulous antiques. A piano owned and played by Liberace. Candelabras used in the very early films at Paramount. You see, the Osters are avid collectors of anything with a history.
This is the actual heart of the house right here. A lot of people have come into this room, and they said the room itself has a real weird air about it.
Shopping for antiques, the Osters have learned that sometimes they bring home more than just the ancient object. A few times, even causing some hair-raising moments.
And I've always been intrigued with skulls, you know. Back in my era, that was a big thing, Halloween parties and all of this stuff.
One day at a yard sale, Rusty bought a skull which was used as a candle holder.
I didn't look at it that close. It was just a small one. From the time I brought it in the door, we had power surges. We had really weird stuff happening.
We had bad luck.
5 cars in one day went down. And I lit this thing on the organ, you know, and my mother-in-law walked in and she just froze dead in her tracks. She says, did you really look at that thing? And I said, no, why? Turned out it was a human skull with ram's horns. I took the thing out in the middle of the street and busted it in a million pieces, and the minute I did it, everything just, I mean, our power come back on. It was all, I got goosebumps. It was all, you know, a part of this whole deal.
Another object attracted Rusty's attention.
It's just a whiskey flask, and it was an antique. Well, it was nice and clean inside, and it had been, they had put a new liner in it and the whole bit. Well, I brought it home, and you could put water in it, shake it around, and pour it out, and you'd get water. Same thing with anything else, Kool-Aid, Coke, or whatever. I'd put whiskey in it, Jack Daniels, and shake it up and hold it for a few minutes, and you could pour it out, and it would come out white, powdery milk. That's another thing I got rid of real fast. So that's why I believe some of the objects you get a hold of sometimes can either be good or bad. And it just seemed like those 2 certain pieces, the longer I held on to them, the worse luck I had.
These days, a mysterious house guest is wandering around the Osters' home.
With the laugh, we figured, well, it's obviously female, and she's not real crazy about him, so.
Even their dog senses her presence.
She'll be laying there, and she'll be watching somebody or something.
She'll turn around and just
She'll turn around and just stop and look at him and watch. And it's like she's watching somebody walk.
And you don't see nothing there.
There's nothing there. Or she'll cock her head and look at it, and it's like, you know they're looking at something.
Like something's there. That we can't see it.
And I really think that there are spirits and stuff out there that maybe missed their call or whatever and working to get there.
Which of the many antique pieces the vanishing lady refuses to let go of remains a secret.
I don't think it's evil or nothing like that. Just, I don't know, like the picture coming down, it was, I don't know how to explain it. I mean, it got my attention.
Where other people might be scared out of their wits, the Osters take it all in their stride.
I think, you know, for some of the things that we've been through and things that have happened, I mean, there's something watching over us, you know, and it's here.
Is it Satan's presence throughout the hotel that the Tommyknockers are trying to warn us about?
Many spirit legends are founded in the colorful and violent days of the Old West. Well, we found a story where a bizarre string of tragedies led us to an old hotel, haunted, some say, by spirits stranded in hell.
A hotel, a place of rest for the weary traveler, an escape from the rat race for the overworked vacationer, or for the unfaithful, a place to satisfy secret sinful desires. Each night in hotels around the world, hundreds of millions sleep in beds, not their own, without concern for who might have occupied the room before them, or what deeds, innocent or otherwise, were done there. If the room's walls could talk, it's certain we would hear many strange and disturbing stories, which would surely make us think twice before bedding down again in just any hotel. One old hotel we discovered in Northern California not only has its share of unsettling stories, but some say hides a horrifying secret as well. During the 130-year history of the Willow Hotel, it has caught fire and nearly burned to the ground numerous times. Following the most recent blaze, only the hotel's first floor was rebuilt. Legend has it that the fires are the work of ghosts, spirits of men who died violently in a now-defunct mine shaft, which lies 100 feet beneath the ground, on which the Willow Hotel stands today.
They're called Tommyknockers, and what they are is, years ago when there was mines, they had the men above the mines who sent messages down to the miners thinking there was danger or if anything was going on, and they just did it in Morse code. It was the easiest way of telling them.
One night, before leaving work, Allison believes she heard a ghostly message from one of the Tommyknockers.
A few times I walked past the buffet, back and forth, you know, just doing my closing shifts, and each time I would hear a tapping.
This ominous tapping occurs in many places throughout the hotel, but as yet, no one has managed to decipher the messages the Tommyknockers are trying to communicate. Former hotel guest Vicki Neal believes they're attempting to warn us about something monstrous which Vicki herself has already encountered twice while at the Willow. The first incident occurred in the ladies' room of the hotel's restaurant.
I was just getting ready to walk out of the bathroom and I heard this, it was the most evil, most hideous laugh I had ever heard in my life. It was like a man laughing at me. And he was right there in the stall with me. I mean, it was just very bizarre, and it was just like an echo. It was as if someone had like an echo machine right there next to me or something. It was just like like that, and it scared me. It was like, get me out of here. I don't want to be here. I don't want to come back.
But she eventually did come back, this time armed with a camera and a friend who photographed Vicki in various parts of the hotel. When the photos were developed, one of them, incredibly, showed an image of the thing which had terrorized Vicki in the restroom.
On this side of the photo, it's very different. I've had a lot of people look at this, and I've had the same reaction from everybody, saying, in fact, well, I have handed this picture to people, and they'll tell me, this is the devil.
And Vicki isn't the only one who's had a demonic encounter at the Willow. Hotel owner Kevin Mooney recalls one unforgettable evening when he had a conversation with a man who was definitely no angel.
One night I was in here in the winter, and this guy walks in a trench coat and sunglasses, and sits down and starts asking me questions about the ghosts. So I started telling him all the things I knew and all the stuff, and he never took his sunglasses off.
The man in the dark glasses had a sinister quality, and Kevin became increasingly nervous as the menacing stranger continued to probe him with questions.
I started getting a little queasy. I said, well, I'm going to close it up now. And he goes, why, you getting scared? And I said, yeah, to tell you the truth, I'm getting a little queasy. So he says, okay, and he left.
After making sure the man was gone, Kevin locked up.
I turned off all the lights and I go out the back. I go to go out the back door, and there's these two red eyes. I mean, just beating through the door, and I just put my head down and went running.
Kevin ran to another exit, but the door was jammed shut.
It felt like probably 5 minutes that it didn't open, and you know, it's probably 5 seconds. But I'm just making those noises, and I got out the door, and my heart's pounding.
Outside, Kevin checked to see if the frightening vision had followed him.
When I looked at that door, there was two flashing red eyes looking right through the door at me. But there was nothing out there when I went out there.
Who or what did Kevin Mooney see that night? Could it have really been the devil? Is it Satan's presence that the Tommyknockers are trying to warn us about? It's as good a guess as any. But there's also another possibility. Some believe the Tommyknockers' death was caused not by a disastrous cave-in, but by their unwitting discovery of a secret passage to a place unholy. A place called hell. Though this theory has not received wide acceptance, it does explain the riddle of why the Willow Hotel, which is just 100 feet above this alleged gateway, has a tendency to catch fire.
Stories like the ones we shared today are merely the tip of the iceberg. There are many more out there. Thanks for joining us. Until next time, this is Patrick McNee for Ghost Stories. Reach beyond the darkness, beyond the grave, to an unexplored dimension as we travel to the mysterious realm of ghosts. Journey with us into the world of ghost stories. Hello, I'm Patrick McNee. You know, in childhood, telling ghost stories was a playful way of letting our imagination soar. Young minds captured in a web of excitement, fear, and confused belief. Well, today, with the popularity of ghostly phenomena, it tends to raise a question. How much of what we thought was in our imagination was?
Much of the area surrounding the Alamo harbors rumors of activity beyond our realm.
Mommy wasn't touching the cards, I wasn't touching the cards, and the cards flipped.
Is it Satan's presence throughout the hotel that the Tommyknockers are trying to warn us about?
Arrived here in 1691, and before that, there were Indian encampments here for 10,000 years. This is a very heavily populated area since many years past.
The most famous attraction in San Antonio is the Alamo, standing still as a reminder of the bloody battle between Texas and Mexican troops in 1836. The accounts of the final days at the Alamo remain controversial, but the result, a painful lesson for the hundreds that died. Much of the area surrounding the Alamo harbors rumors of activity beyond our realm. It's as though there's something out there, restless and lost, with a need to find shelter in a familiar place.
It came exactly from this spot right here. Nowhere else except this spot right here.
Ruben Mendez is an employee of San Antonio's Alamo Dome, a 5-level arena home to major sporting events and concerts. Since its opening, there have been numerous reports of strange ghostly activity occurring in and around the Alamo Dome.
It was about at 4:30 in the morning, and we were doing a changeover for one of the basketball configuration setup. And basically what happened, we came from this area, this hallway right here, me and 2 other fellow co-workers, and we heard this kind of sound.
The sound echoed throughout the halls, stopping and starting on the crew's every move. When Ruben approached the window, the loud rapping noise instantly turned into an eerie silence. Psychic Marie Simpson was called in to investigate.
I saw the energy or the spirit of a young man who was on the outside of the building that I felt was trying to get in. I also felt the energy of a woman who had lived here many years ago. And I feel that she eventually died somewhere around here. And I feel that that's why I picked up her energy.
Could the woman Marie is speaking of, in fact, be the same spirit spotted by a cleaning crew at the front entrance of the Alamo Dome one night?
It was about 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, and they saw this, like they said, this woman just floating towards them, and she was wearing all black. And they just stood there for a while and watched her.
The women couldn't believe their eyes. It wasn't until the dark figure neared the glass that they realized what was standing before them. But the belief that ghosts exist at the Alamo Dome is not only confirmed by the sights and sounds heard by witnesses, but by smell. In this case, lilacs.
This seating right here is known to have its own little scent and coolness. That scent is so strong, but it only lasts 2 or 3 minutes, and then it's gone. It's just like it was just never there. And then your hair stands up, and you get goosebumps, and you get chills.
The Alamo Street Restaurant and Theater.
Buried treasure, floating phantoms, photographs revealing strange pictures, stories you would expect to find in the pages of a novel. But these stories are being told today with the setting in and around the famous Alamo. And with a history dating back centuries, perhaps the town of San Antonio, Texas, has more to offer its visitors than your regular tourist attractions.
I have heard things, doors opening and closing, windows opening and shutting, lights maybe flickering that should not.
And they shut the doors behind them, and they said she just came all the way to the doors and started banging on the doors to let her in. And they just sat there. They couldn't understand what it was.
Here at night, it's real spooky at night, and there's a lot of weird noises at night you can hear, especially when you're by yourselves.
She was standing and watching us rehearse. Stayed probably 30 seconds to a minute, and then just very slowly disappeared.
In recent years, San Antonio, Texas has become a favorite tourist destination. While this fiesta city is known for its beauty and cultural activities, there is the other side. A part of its history time has not buried, giving those who bear witness a chilling reminder that the past here is not dead.
Remember, this is one of the oldest cities in America. The first Europeans, the first Spaniards.
Has also reported ghosts of their own. Deborah Latham, the theater producer, is just one of many who have encountered Marguerite, a resident ghost of the establishment.
I was in rehearsal on the stage here and looked towards the back of the auditorium in what was the choir loft of the church and saw a woman in a very long, flowing dress standing very nicely, quietly watching us rehearse.
And she is more active here when our theater is active, when there's a lot of productions going on and a lot of rehearsals. At that time, she's real evident.
Marguerite has spoken to people here in the theater part of the building on several occasions, calling them by name, and other people have heard her.
But Marguerite isn't the only spirit living here. She is accompanied by a little boy named Eddie.
Eddie loves the kitchen. He loves knocking things around and breaking things in the kitchen. He just has a great time with all that.
We have two photographs of the woman that we know as Margaret. Little Eddie appeared in one of those two photographs. And what's extra creepy about Eddie in the photograph is that he was not in the original photograph. The photograph was taken, was framed and under glass, and then Eddie appeared several months later.
They want to be noticed. It must be frustrating to be completely unseeable by people. Wouldn't you want to do something to cause us to know that